Marcus Reeves brushed his fingers across the vocabulary algorithms displayed on his tablet, making last-minute preparations for his first official interaction with an Ithrian researcher. The diplomatic vessel Concordia had been hosting the alien delegation for 3 weeks, but the notoriously reserved species had kept mostly to themselves, communicating only through formal channels. Emotional distance, his superior had explained during briefing. The Ithrians built their civilization on hyperrationality. They consider our human emotional expressiveness primitive, which made his current assignment all the more surprising. An Ithrian had volunteered for a cultural exchange program, specifically requesting sessions with the human linguistics team. Marcus, as the department's xenolinguistics specialist, had been selected to facilitate what command called a monumental diplomatic opportunity. The observation lounge door whispered open, and Marcus straightened his uniform, mentally reviewing Ithrian greeting customs. No physical contact. Minimal eye connection. At least 2 meters of personal space. What entered was not what he expected. The Ithrian female, at least he presumed female based on the briefing materials, stood nearly his height. Her skin had a subtle blue-violet undertone that complemented the geometric silver markings emerging from her hairline and trailing down her neck. Her eyes, the most striking feature, were larger than human standard with deep indigo irises that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "You are Specialist Marcus Reeves," she stated, her voice melodic despite the formal cadence. No question, Ithrians rarely asked what they could determine. "Yes, and you must be researcher." He paused, struggling with the pronunciation he'd practiced. "Alara," she offered. "My full designation is unpronounceable in your language." "Alara is an acceptable approximation." "Alara," Marcus repeated, gesturing to the seating area with its carefully arranged chairs precisely 2 meters apart, the distance recommended by the diplomatic corps. "Please, make yourself comfortable." She observed the arrangement with what might have been curiosity, though Marcus had been warned not to project human expressions onto Ithrian facial features. Then, instead of taking the designated visitor's seat, she walked directly to Marcus's side of the arrangement and sat on the couch adjacent to his chair. No more than 30 centimeters separated them. Marcus froze. Either he had catastrophically misunderstood Ithrian protocols, or she was deliberately violating them. Sweat prickled at his hairline. A diplomatic incident on his first assignment would certainly end his career. "Is this distance uncomfortable for you?" Alara asked, studying his face with unnerving intensity. No, it's fine," he managed. "I was told Ithrians prefer significant personal space." "Most do," she acknowledged. "However, I am researching human interaction patterns. Your species communicates significant information through proximity, facial microexpressions, and pheromonal exchanges. These cannot be properly studied at standard Ithrian consultation distances." "I see," Marcus said, though he didn't. "That's very thorough of you." Alara tilted her head, reminding Marcus of a bird observing a particularly interesting insect. "Your heart rate has increased by approximately 27% since I sat here. Your pupils have dilated, and your skin temperature has elevated 0 degrees. Heat rushed to Marcus's face. "You can perceive all that?" "Ithrians have evolved heightened sensory capabilities," she explained, shifting minutely closer. "What is this proximity signal in human social contexts?" Marcus cleared his throat. "Well, it depends. Between strangers, it might indicate romantic or sexual interest. Between friends, comfort and trust. In crowded spaces, it might mean nothing at all." "Fascinating," she said, and for a moment, Marcus thought he detected something beyond clinical interest in her gaze. "And what does it signal to you, Specialist Reeves?" The question caught him off guard. Protocol suggested steering the conversation towards safer territory, linguistic patterns, cultural norms, anything but the strange tension suddenly filling the space between them. "Curiosity," he answered honestly. "It signals you're not what I expected." A subtle change passed across her features, the slightest softening around her eyes, a barely perceptible shift in posture. "Then we have that in common, Marcus Reeves." It was the first time she'd used his first name. "You are not what I expected either." As their session continued into discussions of translation algorithms and cultural context markers, Alara maintained her close position. Marcus gradually relaxed, even as he noted the unusual nature of their interaction in his mental report. What he wouldn't record was how, when the session ended, Alara stood to leave and briefly, so briefly he almost believed he imagined it, allowed her fingers to brush against his sleeve. Until our next exchange, she said, those absorbing indigo eyes meeting his directly. Long after she departed, Marcus sat wondering what exactly he had gotten himself into, and why the next session couldn't come soon enough. Humans have 37 distinct smile variations. I've documented 23 from you alone. Marcus looked up from his translation work to find Alara studying him from a distance that grew smaller with each session. Today, she sat close enough that he could detect a subtle scent from her skin, something like ozone and warm spice. I wasn't aware I smiled that much, he replied, setting aside his tablet. 3 weeks into their cultural exchange, and he learned to expect the unexpected from his Ithrian counterpart. You're unaware of most of them, she said, producing her own data tablet and turning it to reveal a collection of images, all his face, captured in various expressions. The most frequent occurs when you solve a linguistic problem. Your right eye narrows 2 millimeters more than your left, and your lips part precisely. Should I be concerned you're documenting my facial tics? Marcus interrupted, unsure whether to be flattered or unnerved. Alara tilted her head in that now familiar bird-like gesture. Is this inappropriate? I understood observation was permitted during our sessions. Observation, yes, but usually with disclosure. A flicker of something embarrassment crossed her features. I see. Human protocols differ from ours. She hesitated, then added, would you prefer I delete the data? Marcus studied her. Beneath her clinical approach, he sensed genuine concern at having crossed a boundary. No, it's all right. Just, perhaps tell me next time you're recording me for analysis? The tension in her posture eased. Agreed. Transparency fosters trust. Trust facilitates deeper exchange. Exactly, Marcus said, then smiled deliberately. Now you can add number 24 to your collection. Her response was unexpected, the faintest echo of his expression, a subtle upturn at the corners of her mouth that vanished so quickly he almost missed it. Did you just smile? He asked, leaning forward. A mimetic response, she explained quickly. Ithrians occasionally mirror expressions to facilitate communication with emotionally expressive species. Marcus wasn't convinced. Interesting. The briefing materials indicated Ithrians consider facial expressions inefficient and avoid them entirely. Alara's gaze shifted away, another first. Most do. I've developed specialized research approaches. Before Marcus could pursue this revelation, Alara changed the subject by placing her hand on the table between them, palm up. The geometric markings that decorated her skin continued across her palm, creating intricate patterns. Human touch conveys significant emotional data, she stated. I request a demonstration. Marcus hesitated. Physical contact with an Ithrian wasn't explicitly forbidden, but the diplomatic guidelines strongly advised against it without explicit permission, which he now apparently had. Slowly, he placed his hand above hers, not quite touching. Are you certain? Instead of answering, Alara closed the distance herself, pressing her palm to his. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through Marcus, not unpleasant, but intense, like static electricity without the shock. Her skin was cooler than human standard, and smoother, almost like polished stone warmed by sunlight. Your pulse accelerated again, she observed, her voice softer than usual. This response, is it discomfort? No, Marcus answered honestly. Surprise, maybe. And he paused, wondering how to explain the complex human response to novel touch. Awareness. Explain. Marcus searched for words that would bridge their different understanding. Humans are hardwired to notice touch. It commands our attention in ways other sensations don't. It's immediate. Alara's fingers shifted, intertwining with his in a deliberate exploration. Like this. The casual intimacy of the gesture caught Marcus off guard. This was far beyond cultural research. The realization that he didn't want to pull away was equally surprising. Yes, he managed. That's generally considered an affectionate gesture. I've observed human crew members engaging in similar contact, those who share close relationships. Marcus nodded, wondering where this was leading. Friends, family, romantic partners, yes. Which category would this place us in? Her question was delivered with scientific precision, but Marcus detected something beneath it, genuine uncertainty. That depends, he said carefully, on why you're really holding my hand. For several heartbeats, Alara was silent, her indigo eyes studying their joined hands. When she spoke, her voice carried a new quality, hesitation. The standard research explanation would be to document haptic responses across species boundaries. And the non-standard explanation? Marcus prompted gently. Alara met his gaze directly. I want to. The impulse lacks scientific justification. The admission seemed to cost her something. A crack in the perfect rationality her species valued. Marcus responded by gently squeezing her hand. Not everything needs scientific justification, Alara. In Ithrian society, it does. For the first time, she sounded troubled. My interest in your species was initially academic. Your emotional openness, your embrace of proximity, your willingness to act on intuition rather than analysis. These were fascinating research subjects. And now, Marcus asked, sensing the shift in her. Now I find myself experiencing curiosity beyond academic parameters. She withdrew her hand slowly, almost reluctantly. It's unprecedented in my research history. Marcus recognized the significance of her admission. For an Ithrian to acknowledge acting on something other than logical analysis was extraordinary. As their session ended, Alara paused at the door. Tomorrow, would you be willing to show me how humans share a meal together? I understand it's a significant social ritual. I'd like that, Marcus replied, realizing he genuinely meant it. After she left, he added his observations to the official log, carefully omitting the hand-holding and the implications of her request. Some things, he decided, belonged in the space between official documentation and personal experience. What he couldn't quite explain, even to himself, was why the prospect of tomorrow's session made him feel like he was standing at the edge of an undiscovered world, both thrilling and terrifying in its possibilities. The emergency klaxon shattered the tranquility of the observation lounge, its piercing wail followed by the automated voice of the ship's AI. Attention all personnel. Gravitational anomaly detected. Impact imminent. Secure all stations and prepare for turbulence. Marcus instinctively reached for Alara, who had been sitting beside him reviewing Earth literature on human relationships. Her eyes widened as the ship lurched violently, sending both of them tumbling to the deck plating. Engineering to all decks, a strained voice came through the comm system. Brace for emergency maneuvers. Non-essential systems shutting down to divert power. Before Marcus could respond, the lights flickered and died, plunging the observation lounge into darkness broken only by the crimson glow of emergency indicators. A final violent shudder ran through the ship's frame, followed by the distinctive clang of emergency bulkheads sealing throughout the vessel. In the sudden silence that followed, Marcus became acutely aware of Alara's proximity, her body pressed against his where they'd fallen, her breath quick against his neck. Are you hurt? He asked, helping her sit up as his eyes adjusted to the dim emergency lighting. Functional, she replied, but her voice carried an unfamiliar tremor. My species does not respond well to unexpected physical displacement. Marcus accessed the wall terminal, which displayed minimal information. The ship had entered emergency protocols, power was being rerouted, and all personnel were to remain in place until systems were restored. According to the schematic, they were effectively sealed in the observation lounge until further notice. We may be here a while, he explained, returning to where Alara sat, her back pressed against the curved wall beneath the now darkened stars. The gravitational anomaly must have been more severe than the sensors predicted. How long? She asked, her composed demeanor showing uncharacteristic cracks. Hours, maybe. Are you claustrophobic? Ithrians don't experience phobias as humans understand them, she stated, but her fingers traced rapid patterns across her arm markings, a self-soothing gesture Marcus had never seen her display. Acting on instinct, Marcus sat beside her and gently took her hand, interrupting the anxious movement. Tell me about Ithria, he suggested softly. We've spent all these weeks discussing Earth cultures, but you've shared very little about your homeworld. The distraction worked. Alara's breathing steadied as she began describing the twin moons of her home planet, the crystalline architecture of its floating cities, the mathematical precision of its orbital calendar. With each detail, her scientific detachment gradually returned, until she reached the topic of contemporary Ithrian society. The great rationalization occurred 3 generations ago, she explained, her voice lowering though they were alone. Our leaders determined that emotional responses were inefficient and counterproductive to technological advancement. Neural modification became standard practice from early childhood. They altered your brains? Marcus asked, horrified. Altered is imprecise. The procedures suppress emotional development without removing the capacity entirely. Each generation undergoes more comprehensive treatments. Her fingers tightened around his. My generation was the first to show statistically significant declines in creative problem-solving and diplomatic effectiveness. Understanding dawned on Marcus. That's why you're studying humans. Not just for academic research. My team theorizes that controlled reintroduction of emotional processing might benefit our species, she confirmed. I volunteered to explore human emotional responses as potential templates for limited reintegration. That's why you've been pushing boundaries, Marcus realized. Sitting closer, making physical contact. Initially, yes, she acknowledged. The project parameters called for documenting physiological responses to proximity and contact. And now? Marcus asked. Alara was silent for several moments, the emergency lights casting her features in soft crimson shadows. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a vulnerability he'd never heard before. I've exceeded project parameters. My own responses have become involved. What began as observation has become experience. I find myself. She struggled for the words. Feeling. Not just documenting emotion, but experiencing it. The admission hung between them, weighty with implication. In the dim light, Marcus could see the subtle tremors in her hands, the uncharacteristic uncertainty in her posture. Is that frightening for you? He asked gently. Terrifying, she whispered. And exhilarating. Like standing at the edge of a quantum probability wave before it collapses into certainty. Without thinking, Marcus pulled her closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. To his surprise, she didn't resist but instead leaned into the embrace, her head coming to rest against his chest. Your heartbeat is most efficient, she murmured after a while. Steady despite the ship's emergency status. Marcus smiled into the darkness. That's because I'm not afraid right now. Explain, she requested, the word muffled against his uniform. Fear is appropriate when you face danger alone, he said simply. But we're not alone. Her hand moved to rest over his heart, measuring its rhythm. On Ithria, vulnerability is considered a critical weakness. On Earth, shared vulnerability is how we build trust, Marcus countered. It's how we know who will stand beside us when the emergency klaxons sound. They remained that way as time stretched on, the small sanctuary of connection amid the ship's crisis gradually shifting something fundamental between them. When Alara finally spoke again, her voice carried a quality Marcus had never heard from her, something almost musical in its softness. I came to study humans, she confessed. I never expected to envy them. Marcus brushed his fingers along the geometric patterns of her arm, tracing constellations he was only beginning to understand. Maybe there's a middle path between pure emotion and pure logic. Something new we could discover together. The emergency lights suddenly brightened, and the ship's systems hummed back to life around them. The moment of crisis had passed, but something had irreversibly changed in its wake. As they reluctantly separated before the bulkhead doors reopened, Alara's indigo eyes met his with new certainty. I would like to explore that path, she said simply. It wasn't a scientific proposal or a cultural exchange initiative. It was something far more rare and precious, an invitation into uncharted territory where neither human nor Ithrian had ventured before.